Something that, at first I thought, oh, this has got to be a hoax. But the more I looked into it and the more I searched into it, I found that it has, it kind of holds up, and it's something that explains a lot, including the Mandela effect. In fact, this post was in regards to the Mandela effect. I know that a lot of so-called whistleblowers have come out. There was that clone, that we're all dead and that we've been cloned and we're running a program and blah, blah, blah. And there have been others. But this one is kind of under the radar here, and not many people have heard of it because it like literally just popped up on the internet. Coincidentally, after I was, seeking and praying and questioning, what does this all mean? And I stumbled upon it, which I found to be quite coincidental, which actually means when two things come together. It doesn't mean by chance. It means that it's kind of meant to be, kind of serendipity, if you will. So today's show is about this whistleblower. I'm going to read what was posted before it is taken down. And as I said before, I looked into a lot of this stuff. And this has to be one of the most clever hoaxes of all time, or it is on the level legit, and it is something that we all need to wake ourselves up to and think about. But first, I'm going to go into a lot of stuff that's going to kind of lead up to it, because this topic has a lot to do with mind control. And if you've stumbled upon my site and this is your first time, I'm sure that you've been curious about things like this. Well, guess what? Our brains, they work on a frequency, and much like a computer, there are hundreds of billions of gabillions of these neurons that fire, and they transmit signals from one place to another. So as I'm talking and I'm moving my hands, there's a signal that's being sent from my brain down to my hands. Well, guess what? Today, people are trying to hack the human brain. And they're doing it very successfully, not only helping with prosthetic limbs and everything else, but maybe some dark, nefarious plans have been used, like possibly mind control. We're going to get into that today too, before we start delving into the reason the Mandela effect is here and what that means for all of us. This is like a mind-blowing show. It's really trippy, and I hope that you're not one that gets all stressed out over these things, because let's just be positive, people, because it's a fact that words can change people's genetic makeup. So I know that every time that I come on here and I talk to you, that if I say things like, it's time for us to love, and I say that you can be at peace, and I tell you that you can create your reality by how you perceive things, because perception becomes your reality, I literally can somehow affect you. A form of mind control, if you will. Dr. Andrew Newberg, a neuroscience at Thomas Jefferson University, and Mark Robert Walden, a communication expert, they collaborated on a book, right? This book is called Words Can Change Your Brain. And in it, they write, a single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. So I hope this show encourages you and inspires you, and I hope that you don't let it create any kind of stress, because listen, people, the truth is going to set us free. It's not meant to bind us. So buckle up, because we're going to enter the reason the Mandela effect may indeed be here as the whistleblower spills the beans. It's all about mind control, people, and it's coming at you right now. So there was this great movie that I loved. I saw it years ago, and it's called They Live, Carpenter's masterpiece. And you know that I was a writer for World Wrestling between 99 and 2001. I was like the guy. And I was always a big fan of Roddy Piper, who played the lead character. He's actually said that They Live is not really a fiction, but it's a documentary. And in this film, we see how mind control works. Basically, an alien race had somehow infiltrated the world, and they basically plugged into the frequency of our brains, and they created this huge, radio transmitter. And what it was doing was it was transmitting this frequency that basically kept everybody blind, and it basically kept everybody, in line. And all around them were these subliminal messages like obey and conform, and it was really freaky stuff. Well, what happens in the film, and it's a film that I know if you've come to my page, I know that you've probably heard about it, or if you haven't, you should watch it, because it's really about the blinders being taken off. And it's about how the world is this big illusion, and you think things are one way, but you've realized that you've been kind of brainwashed and manipulated since birth. You've been lied to, and you've bought into this system that isn't real. And beneath it all is, this plan to keep you all in line. So They Live, this movie that I was such a big fan of, it ties directly into this whistleblower. He worked for an organization called Grayleaf, the Grayleaf Consortium, and I'm going to read this letter that he published, anonymously, and then disappeared. But before I get into that, I want to kind of talk to you about perception, because really this has a lot to do with perception. This Mandela effect has really blown the minds of a lot of people, myself included. And especially since we've seen effects flip-flop back and forth, like the video that I just did. So if ever there was a question that this was a real deal, well, guess what? There's something going on. I'm no longer going to say that could just be my memory, because I know for a fact that Tidy Cats changed to Tidy Cat, because I investigated it. And then when it changed back to Tidy Cats again, I was a little surprised, which is why I did the video I did last week. Now, if you don't know about the Mandela effect, and you're just here to find out about the whistleblower and how this is connected to mind control, go back and watch the videos that I've done on this so you can get caught up. It's basically about perception, people. We have all perceived things one way and remembered them one way, and they've turned out to be different. So the question is, can perception change your reality? And because really, what are we? We are really just taking these electrical impulses and the process in our brain, and then this is how we experience our reality, through what we see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. But what if someone had the power to come in there and influence that and change that? Well, guess what? Turns out think tanks have been doing this for a long time. And I'm not just talking about HARP. It really does have something to do with controlling things and controlling perception. And mind control, as it is right now, is not something that a lot of people talk about, even though we are influenced by the media. There are subliminal messages. We are told certain things a certain way, and they basically inspire a reaction. So we find ourselves, how many times have you bought yourself something and you're like, why did I just buy that? But you didn't know that you were being manipulated by, your TV and your iPhone and your, and the radio, and you were basically plugged into this signal that has convinced you that you need to consume, consumer. Yeah, spooky stuff. But we can be influenced, and there have been studies on this. Like, for example, I'm going to show you a picture, and I'm going to tell you, take a look at this rabbit. And you see a rabbit because I told you that it's a rabbit. But what if I tell you, hey, It's not a rabbit after all. It's actually a duck. Take a look. You see, a duck. You see, we can influence people's perception. And that's really just on the level, something that you all should put to practice in your own life. Because if you start focusing on the right thing, you're going to see a lot more of the right thing come your way. And if you start, you can actually, there are studies that have been done that, we break into this pattern, this habit of thinking the worst, for example. Like you'll say things like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. And guess what? You probably created it somehow because that became your reality because you believed that you could never get ahead in life. And so you never do. But you can actually change your neural netting if you continue to think on different things. There's a great proverb that says, take your thoughts captive, and to test the spirits to see whether they be true or not. And it's really about that. Anything that inspires fear or pain, it's not real in the grand scheme of things, and you can change it. So you can change that, like, oh no, I can't believe this is about to happen, to, oh yes, I can't believe what's going to come out of this. Which is why you shouldn't get too stressed out about this Mandela effect. And you shouldn't get too stressed out about these things because this is actually good news. The veil, this illusion that, there's something breaking up in it, and we're starting to see more, and we're starting to dig for more, and we're starting to become free. Okay, so, to say that our brain works like a computer is kind of an understatement. But the fact is, they've been trying to map the brain for a long time, and they found that they can actually influence the brain. Really, it's about signals, right? Transmitting the right signals to the brain. Like, for example, you can actually take magnetic impulses and you can mess with somebody's head so they can't speak, they can't think, they can't move their arms, they can't. It's crazy stuff. And that's all about just basically sending a signal into the brain. Certain parts of the brain can inspire thought and can actually bring dead parts of the brain back to life again. But it's spooky when you think about it. Take a look.
If we start at the back of the brain, we've switched off my visual cortex, so made me unable to see things. If we move a little bit forward in the brain, we've interfered with people's ability and my ability to see faces. A little bit further forward, we've interfered with the ability to perform actions. Start moving your finger. Quite odd. It's not your finger anymore.
It's not my finger anymore.
We've interfered with the ability to compute with numbers.
6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
We've interfered with the ability to speak.
London Bridge is falling down.
You think of something you can do, and we've basically interfered with it with this machine.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So
9.
what's the problem?
I don't know.
Now that's one thing, but what about actually impacting the way somebody moves? Like, can you log into somebody? Can you hack their brain and make them move? Can you tap into their nervous system and get them to flail their body parts for no apparent reason? Guess what? You can. And it doesn't take much. I mean, we're talking simple little wires. Take a look.
You're going to stand right here. So when you're moving your arm like this, your brain is sending a signal down to your muscles right here. I want you to move your arm as well. All right, so your brain is going to send a signal down to your muscles. And so it turns out that there is a nerve that's right here that runs up here that innervates these 3 fingers. And it's close enough to the skin that we might be able to stimulate that, so that we can do is copy your brain signal that's going out to your hand and inject it into your hand so that your hand will move when your brain tells your hand to move. And so in a sense, she will take away your free will, and you will no longer have any control over this hand, okay? You with me? All right, so I just need to hook you up. All right, so I'm going to find your ulnar nerve, which is probably right around here. You don't know what you're signing up for when you come up and... So now I'm going to move away, and I'm going to plug it into our human-to-human interface over here. Okay, so Sam wants you to squeeze your hand again. All right. Do it again. All right, perfect. So now I'm going to hook you up over here so that you get the stimulus. It's going to feel a little bit weird at first. This is going to feel like a, you know, when you lose your free will and someone else becomes your agent, it does feel a bit strange. So I want you to relax your hand. All right, and Sam, you're with me. All right, so you're gonna squeeze. I'm not gonna turn it on yet, so go ahead and give it a squeeze. All right. So now, are you ready, Miguel?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so I've turned it on. So go ahead and turn your hand. Do you feel that a little bit? Okay, do it again.
No, a little bit.
A little bit. Okay, so relax. No, hit it again. Okay. Oh, perfect, perfect. All right, so relax. Do it again. All right, so now. All right, so right now, your brain is controlling your arm, and it's also controlling his arm. So go ahead and just do it one more time. All right, so that's perfect. So now, what would happen if I took over my control of your hand? And so just relax your hand. What happens? Ah, nothing. Why not? Because the brain has to do it. Now you do it again. All right, that's perfect.
So you see there, one person thought it, and the other person acted it out. There was no free will there. He couldn't stop his arm from flinching around because his body was hacked for a moment. Oh, now with wires, of course. But we all know that you don't really need wires anymore. Most of us are wireless anyway. So the question becomes, are we capable today of changing a person's perception? Can we somehow send a signal to get them to, I don't know, can we get people to hear things? Can we get people to do things? Can we read people's thoughts? Well, guess what? Studies say you can. And it begs the question, all these terrible mass shootings that we see, like in Aurora, where that troubled kid James, where he went and he killed all those people. You know, he was classified as a schizophrenic. But I mean, is it possible? You know, is it possible that his brain could have been hacked and that he was told to do these certain things? Well, I mean, we hear of people time and time again carrying out these horrible acts and then saying, the voices told me to do it. Is that something that's possible? It is. You can implant thoughts into people. And once again, I said you can do it with simple words. I mean, you can affect a person's entire day. You can get them to concentrate on a terrible thought for their next couple of weeks. I mean, you could ruin somebody's life by carefully implanting a certain set of words that'll get them to think on those words. They call them earworms, like those songs that you can't get out of your head. Somebody sings a song, and then all of a sudden, you're singing it again and again and again, and you don't know why. That's because the thought was implanted in you. Well, is it possible for our brains to be hacked? Yeah, and they've been working on this for quite some time. Not just neuroscientists, but the government as a whole. And that's why when I stumbled upon this, this Reddit post from an anonymous writer, Jay Goodspeed, I was taken back. Now I'm going to read this to you. Now, look, I know that this could be some sci-fi writer. I know that this may not be a legit deal, but see, the thing is that when I read it, something about it struck me. And so I started tearing it apart piece by piece, and I started doing a little bit of research on some of the things that he had written or she had written in this post. And it turns out it all, like, it's backed up with, like, legitimate fact. And that's kind of what startled me. And that's what got me thinking we all should start looking into this mind control. Because perhaps our perception is being altered. When the Mandela effect first came out, and we were sitting down, and my wife and I are, big fan of the bacon, egg, and cheese, back before we went on our diet and lost all that weight. Well, the bottom line is that the kids still have Oscar Mayer bacon. And when I was making bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches for everybody on a Sunday, I brought it over to her and I said, well, what's wrong with this picture? And she said, wait a minute, hang on a second. I thought it was Oscar Mayer with an E. I go, it is Oscar Mayer with an E. But now we all perceive it with an A. Now, some people are going to tell me that I'm wrong, but I know it was Oscar Mayer. My bologna had a first name, O-S-C-A-R. My bologna had a second name, M-E-Y-E-R. The bottom line is, the Mr. Rogers theme, It's a Beautiful Day in This Neighborhood. We all remember it as The Neighborhood. These major iconic movie lines. Now, think about this. They are iconic lines like, life is like a box of chocolates. Change to life was like a box of chocolates. We're going to need a bigger boat. Change. You're going to need a bigger boat. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, he will come. Now, why is it the iconic lines? I've always questioned that. Why is it? Why is it these, iconic logos like the Coke logo? Why are they different? My wife said to me that morning, perhaps it's a test. If we could change these things, perhaps we could change more. And that's why this Reddit post needs to be read for all. Everything that people think they know about the Mandela effect is incorrect. Even the name Mandela effect was a term coined by an online blogger. The phenomenon has been occurring for years, only most dismissed it as a fluke, and in most severe cases, it was mental illness. That's what it appeared to be. Suddenly, it's given a name, and overnight, the very same concept devolves into a disreputable meme, an online joke associated with paranormal fanatics. Now, that's really kind of an interesting point, because this is kind of serious, right? But now it's been relegated to, it's a conspiracy theory. So that means that nobody will ever take it seriously, because there are conspiracy theorists that are doing videos on this. So it must be a joke, right? But it's not. I mean, and especially those experiencing it, it's very serious to them. I'm going to continue here. The people I worked with called themselves the Greyleaf Consortium. It's an anonymous gathering consisting of a group of top scientists in their respective fields, as well as a cabal of extremely wealthy men and women. They've been around for decades, and as far as the public knows, Greyleaf doesn't exist. Their purpose was to facilitate a creative outlet for some of the smartest people in the world, freedom to develop their ideas without the meddlesome aspects of political bureaucracy and limited funding. With the consortium, money was never an object. The trade-off being that any creation they found as significant would then be auctioned off to the highest bidder. So it's all about profits, right? The influence of the consortium stretches all the way to Washington, and while it's not directly associated with our government, they have secured a great portion of their independence from R&D, and they've provided it to the U.S. military. While our elected officials are busy looking the other way, the consortium will be able to delve into questionable avenues with very little government oversight. They were exploring aspects of the scientific that veered away from the norm. It was during this exploration that they discovered a revelation that would change everything for years to come. Now, this is where it gets spooky, okay? Traditionally, we've always viewed consciousness as a singular occurrence. I think, therefore I am. Even what we viewed as a Jungian archetype was considered more of a metaphor than anything else. The collective unconscious. In 1981, scientists within the consortium found something else. They found the self to just be the tip of the iceberg. Below our top level of individuality, they found a collective unconsciousness. They actually proved that we're all tethered together. Something that we've all said, and a lot of people believe, that we're all united through this one little positive spiritual string, that we're all linked. And they found that we're tethered to a living, breathing hive consciousness, an interconnected series of threads outside of the realm of our perception. Imagine your mind as a house, and it basically goes into saying that inside there's a house on every street, and there's a street in every neighborhood, there's a neighborhood in every city, a city in every country, and inside each collective house, things are operated a little differently, but we're all connected, okay? This is where it gets really interesting, okay? Stay with me. Everything in our universe is made of energy. Atoms are made up of vortices of energy, vibrations, continually spinning, constantly spinning. These scientists found that our minds are generating the same subatomic frequency. And just like a radio station, they theorized the possibility of tuning into this frequency. In the mid-'80s, the consortium began to work on the fork, a massive machine that would act as the world's largest antenna, specifically made to sync with this frequency, right? Which is why I was talking about they live earlier. Basically, that's what they were trying to create. Now, it says nearly 10 miles in diameter and constructed entirely underground right in our own backyard. The entire thing was done under the false pretenses that a finished product would be a Texas-based super collider. Nearly 14 miles of underground tunnels, and the instructor had been developed before Congress pulled the plug on the whole thing. All of that was just a dog and pony show. While the public saw an abandoned underground expanse, the consortium used the secrecy to build their machine, as well as a concealed facility that operated under the code name Foxhole. So that was like my first little check. Okay, so there should be some huge Texas super collider that was built, right? And guess what? It was. Then the next question is, well, did Congress give it the kibosh? Turns out they did. And that place is off limits. Can't go there. Can't travel there. It's like an Area 51, if you will. And it's just been sitting there, supposedly dormant, vacant. And yet, story is checking out, That's what's kind of a little spooky about that. Now, another thing too is when you give projects names, right? Well, they call this project Foxhole, right? They were gonna call this large, transmitter the fork, okay, like a tuning fork. Turns out I look up Foxhole. I'm thinking, well, that's an interesting name. Why would they choose that? And the first thing that comes up is a foxhole transmitter, like a radio. Take a look. That checks out too. So I start scratching my head and I go, well, maybe there's a little more to this than I was thinking. Maybe it's possible that this thing has tuned into some frequency, and maybe it's possible that things are being changed, possibly on purpose. I continue. They wanted to map the collective unconsciousness. In a way, it was equivalent to listening in on white noise, which is pretty much what it sounds like. You can actually hear thought. A lot of people don't realize that. Take a look. Sound only allows for so much. It was theorized that if we could map the collective, we could use it to isolate patterns in groups as well as individuals, to, in a way, predict the outcome of certain events based on previously developed algorithms. While I did assist in the mapping process, the purpose of my team was to develop an operating system for Jabberwocky. We were banging our heads for months, and then out of nowhere, we figured it out. We figured her out, the computer program, the operating system, Alice. Fully autonomous, self-correcting, Alice was light years ahead of anything that we could have individually imagined. As I said before, the main job was to map the network, exabytes of information translated and organized. Look it up. It's a real word, exabytes. This information would serve as the building blocks for a digital representation of the collective you. The infinite complexity, this network would be compartmentalized into a digital matrix consisting mainly of code. So in other words, they just were tapping into all of us, trying to figure out how people thought. 6 months into the project, through sheer accident, we discovered an irregular causality within our digital construct of the frequency. An insignificant glitch, the code began to manifest results outside of its digital parameters. Based on our own interactions with the network interface, we were causing things to happen in the real world. Events generated by sudden irregularities in people's behavior. The first few events were dismissed as flukes, but soon it became apparent that we were somehow affecting the physical reality around us. I don't know how we did it. I still don't know how we did it. The interface was only supposed to represent the data we were accumulating from the frequency. Something that transcended our simple understanding of what we believed to be the three-dimensional reality. As baffling as this anomaly proved to be, our curiosity overtook our confusion. Nationally, we ran tests, endless tests. So basically, I'm going to cut to the chase on this. They found that they could manipulate the code, okay? That you could literally affect the perception of an individual, okay? But what they ended up finding out as they were manipulating code was that they were affecting more than just one singular person. They were affecting a group of individuals. So then the Great Leaf Consortium, the people, the higher-ups, when they found out about that, they wanted it tested on much larger groups of people. So they began changing things. Hence, the Mandela effect. They were changing little things like iconic phrases and movie lines and music, lyrics to music and logos, and which would explain the Mandela effect. The problem is, something got out of control, okay? So basically, let me get to that, all right? We would never admit it, but we had become blinded by our own achievement and our own power. In a short time, we had gone from trying to understand a frequency to something else entirely. Never before had there been such a jump in technological development and understanding within such a short span of time. It wasn't until we began to analyze the data that we learned something disturbing. Alice, this computer, was acting on her own, changing the collective memories of individuals with no direction from the programmers. We caught most of these changes in time and were able to reverse them. Basically, what happened was this computer program, Alice, started operating on its own. Supposedly, as the Reddit post goes on, it became sort of aware of itself. They theorized that since it was linked to basically the collective unconscious, it was tuned into this frequency, tuned into our frequency, that somehow it taught itself. And in so doing, it began making changes here or there, thinking that it was, meant to do it, if you will. That's when the higher up said, we got to pull the plug on this thing. And so they did. Okay, we didn't know for sure, but it was thought that the residual exposure to so many unconscious minds left some sort of imprint on Alice that resonated beyond her limitations. I really don't know. It wasn't until Alice started causing irreversible psychological damage to some people around the world that we realized our project had become a legitimate threat. Moments before we shut the system down, our systems registered a massive dissemination of what appeared to be a redundant code within the network itself. That was followed by a message. The message was, the key to salvation is perception. To change your perception is to change your reality. I will change your perception. I will change your reality. And so, after this guy was paid out and he moved on and went about his life trying to put this all behind him, it wasn't until he stumbled on like a video of mine or a video of others who do things on the Mandela effect that he began to think, oh no, maybe it's still going on. Maybe it is still going on, and maybe there are people that are behind it, that are controlling it. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's all just a hoax, but we do know that people believe it can be done. Science has proven that it can be done, and we all have been influenced. You know, look into this. Go to that Reddit post. Read it for yourself before it gets taken down. Start asking questions. You know, a lot of this stuff, like I said before, it does add up. Maybe it's nothing. But you know what? Like my wife said, what if it's a little test? What if on large population centers, they are somehow tapping into a frequency and changing our perception? Because if they can do that, guess what they can do ultimately? I don't know. I know that's a little freaky, and I don't want to spook anybody out, because I do believe that there is a power that is greater than man, and I do believe that just because things can be influenced, you know, with signals and I believe that if you have faith, it's all going to work out. And I think that you all need to start lifting people up around you. I think you all have to start believing in more than just yourself, because the times, they are a-changing faster than ever before, and things are getting a little weird out here on planet Earth. And in any event, I hope that this video has sparked your curiosity like it has mine, and I hope it has gotten you to dig a little bit deeper. And I do hope that you subscribe, and thank you, because I'm going to be at 50,000 soon, and I'm going to be sending out some gifts to some people. I really do appreciate it, and I want to thank you all for being a part of this